So when you listen to a politician, what do you listen to? What are you listening for?
Well, I certainly listen for certain habits of mind and decision-making. I don't believe that anyone has an ideology that's going to steer them through every possible crisis and contingency. But I'm interested in the politician who can evaluate different opinions, that takes steps not to impose a groupthink where one opinion just becomes the only thing that's considered in a group of like-minded people. Someone who will assess incoming evidence and perhaps change course as the facts shift. Someone who will seek out expertise. Someone who will basically apply intelligence to the very challenging problems that any president inevitably will face.
And to what extent is the choice of words a part of that?
Well, it is partly so that we can assess how a politician thinks and what a politician believes. But of course, the art of rhetoric is one of the main tools by which a politician in a democracy can assemble coalitions that can work together. Stirring rhetoric, if it's not deceptive or divisive, can bring people along enough to get something done. And of course, successful presidents have often been successful communicators. Roosevelt, Kennedy, Reagan, and so on. Above their intelligence, they had the gift of getting people to cooperate.
About 10 years ago right now, you had a piece in the New York Times, and it had this in it. The law requires language to do something for which it is badly designed. Leave nothing to the imagination. Lawmakers and lawyers do their best to co-opt language for this unnatural job, but even their prolix definitions and legalese inevitably leave room for alternative interpretations that a clever adversary will find.
Yes, I think that was the one in response to Clinton's testimony during after the Paula Jones deposition, where he infamously said, when asked whether he was having a sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky, said, well, it depends on what the meaning of is. That is when he was challenged after his lawyer had said there is no sex of any kind. And he said it depends on what the meaning of is. Something that I return to in the Stuff of Thought, where I look at the semantics of tense. What is the present tense? What is the past tense? And use that to analyze Clinton's self-defense. I gave him a good grade. I think he was an astute, intuitive linguist. And what he said, namely, when asked the question, his affair was over. And when he was asked, is there any sex? And he said no, in the present tense. The occasion for that closing sentence, though, was the fact that, of course, what the prosecutor was interested in was not whether he was currently involved in an affair, but whether he ever had one in recent history. Clinton was aware of that as well, and he said, my goal in the deposition was to be truthful but not helpful. Now, the question is, in a court of law, is that a defensible strategy? Well, I'll leave it to the lawyers to decide that. But what he was exploiting was the fact that in ordinary conversation we do both. You can't have an ordinary conversation unless you're both truthful and helpful. If you're not helpful, you're either lying or you're going on at such length that your listener is going to get up and leave.
Can you give an example?
Well, we would talk, if you have to spell everything out, your speech would sound like a legal contract. Because if I were to say, how much longer will this take? Well, what does this mean? In context, you're thinking, well, it's probably our give and take until the calls come in. Mm-hmm. And that's because you and I both have the same model as to what's happening. I don't have to spell out what this means. And when I say how much longer, you're not going to say 7 minutes, 42.1 seconds, because you know I don't need it to that degree of precision. We're not even aware of all of the missing steps that we unconsciously fill in and all of the intelligent guesses we make about the other person's expectations.
But isn't that where miscommunication comes in?
It often is, exactly. And in a court of law, when instead of having conversational partners who cooperate to move the conversation along, you have adversaries, then each side can exploit what is left unsaid, and then in order to withhold the damaging truth from the other side, and then you get a departure from the ordinary rules of conversation in the courtroom. And that's why Clinton, though I think technically correct, drew such fury. And in fact, his statement about it depends on what the meaning it is was cited as one of the 5 articles of impeachment when he was impeached.
Well, the answer to your question is we're going to go to the phone calls now.
Okay.
Our guest this month on In Depth is Steven Pinker, and we are going to open up our phones, invite you to join us. He is going to be with us for 2.5 more hours, a full 3-hour program, a chance to talk about his complete body of work. Here's how you can join us if you like. If you live in the East or Central Time Zone, 202-737-0001. And if you live in the Mountain or Pacific Time Zone, 202-737-0002. We have an email address. Some people prefer to send their questions in that way. We will get on as many as we can. It's booktv@cspan.org. And we're going to start with an email question that came in even before the program started. This questioner asked, can I change my genetic makeup with willpower? In other words, focus attention and action until it becomes automatized. Automatized, yeah.
Okay. Well, you can certainly automatize things. That is, when you learn how to drive, first you think through every motion of the stick shift, then it becomes automatic. And that involves a change in connection strengths in certain parts of the brain that allow you to do things without thinking about it. It doesn't literally change your genetic makeup in the sense of the sequence of bases on the DNA molecule, but it does change what becomes second nature. In fact, we call it second nature because it's acts as if it's in your human nature, but it's something that you acquire.
So the same caller says, presuming that I don't like certain inherited thought processes that I have, or behaviors or impulses, what mechanisms in my brain allow me for this dissident thinking that I might change?
Yes. Well, I think people can change within a certain range, and for different people the ranges are in different places. It probably gets harder and harder as you approach the limits of your range. But of course, that's why we have education. That's why we make New Year's resolutions. That's why we try to change social norms. And people do, of course, inhibit impulses. They set alarm clocks. They turn off the TV. They say no to a second helping of dessert. They read. They practice. They take lessons. There are lots of ways in which we can change our habits. Some of them involve parts of the brain like the basal ganglia, which are 2 sets of nuclei buried deeply within the brain that package routines of behavior so that you can just kind of turn them on instead of thinking through each step. For motor sequences like a golf swing or a baseball pitch, the cerebellum, that kind of little brain hanging at the back of your brain, executes smooth motions as a result of practice. The frontal lobes, the parts in the right behind your forehead, can inhibit impulses that spring from more evolutionarily ancient parts of the brain so that you can delay gratification. If the choice is between a yummy dessert now and 2 pounds heavier on the scale tomorrow, the frontal lobes help you say, forego the pleasure now, get the greater pleasure tomorrow morning on the scale. So those are some of the parts of the brain that are involved.
Let's get some phone calls in. Glen Allen, Virginia, you're first up. Glen Allen, please go ahead.
I noticed throughout the beginning of the program and up until now you've been using the word change quite a bit. I wrote a little article earlier this year concerning the politicians talking about how much Americans want change. Americans don't really want change. We want all our money back. And I have ways to implement things to do that through what I term creative utilization of information. I'm looking to empower individuals and small businesses with existing technologies to expand and diversify their interests to an unlimited degree. It's something I tested back in the 80s, and it does work, and in the process had some negative experiences, and as a result was written up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, where I even exposed the former high-level federal government bureaucrat.
Well, we're going to leave it at that. Thank you. We are talking more about language, cognitive thought. not so much about politics. So let's go to Thousand Oaks, California. Thousand Oaks, please go ahead. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I have a 10-year-old son who was diagnosed by his high school, or with his school, with a